Recently, I overheard somebody complaining about their job. When a friend asked how they were, they responded saying, "Things are just crazy busy right now. Yesterday I clocked a 14-hour day that started with 3 back-to-back Zoom meetings that probably could have been emails. And then it took me ages to respond to an inbox full of messages filled with corporate jargon. All right before my boss called me to deal with a sudden time-sensitive issue. And I had to work through lunch." As for me, I hope that's a conversation I never have to relate to. The job of a fisherman can be exhausting and hectic in its own way, but it's not something I would trade for anything else. In this work, I think a lot of us have days, or maybe even years, where it feels like there's an expiration date on our livelihood. Resilience is part of the job, but it's getting a lot harder to sustain a life as a small-scale fisherman. My life started on the water. My parents used to bring me out on fishing trips during the summer months while they worked, and as a kid it didn't get much better than growing up on a boat. In those years I learned the ropes of what it meant to be a fisherman, developed a distinct sense of fashion, narrowly managed to hold on to all of my fingers, was treated to some of the finest food our coast has to offer, and generally got up to no good in the net loft while Dad was working on gear. Even as a kid, you could tell that the work wasn't easy, but it came with a kind of joy that's hard to find anywhere else, and I've been chasing that ever since. For me, that looks like making a career as a fisherman, just like my father and his father before him. But behind those magical moments out on the water, there's a lot of work that has to happen behind the scenes. Almost there. I've heard that fishing is monotonous drudgery interspersed with moments of glory, and it's that glory that makes it all worth it. I've just come from fishing herring, one of the first openings of the year after a long landlocked winter, and for the next couple of months we'll be in full swing preparing for prawn season. Hard to put a value on a happy crew. For every item that gets crossed off the to-do list, it feels like 3 more end up going on. But the details matter because very soon we'll be saying goodbye to land and our boat, Nakut, will become home. Every year we look forward to these times spent out on the remote parts of the coast where life is lived cruising at a comfortable 7 knots, 8 if we're lucky. Plus, the neighbors are first class. And it's a good thing because sometimes they're the only company we have for 40 days at a time. We share this coast with so many incredible creatures, and you can't help but notice how each species relies on another. Whales and salmon eat herring, bears, eagles, and orca eat salmon, and salmon get carried into rich coastal forests where they nourish the trees. Listing the relationships would take hours, but it's a complex web of life, and one that we have to find our part in too.
We want the fish to thrive because then we thrive, so this image that people have of us thinking we're just out there to catch the last fish is so wrong because we have to think ahead to next year.
When it comes to managing fish stocks, the Fisheries Act is the overarching rule book here in Canada. To be able to fish, there are 2 things you need: a license, which gives you permission to fish, and quota, which sets a limit on how much you can fish. Here in British Columbia, you don't actually have to be a fisherman to own licenses or quota, so corporations and foreign investors have snatched them up.
So much of the wealth of fishing has been taken away from fishermen.
Since they aren't out on the water fishing themselves, they rent the right to fish back to us, like a landlord-tenant relationship.
Instead of the people in the gumboots harvesting getting paid, it's the guy who holds a piece of paper sitting at home.
Because of this, we have little to no control over how our catch is processed and where in the world it ends up. Under these conditions, it's a fight just to keep your head above the water. And it's not just happening here. From the coast of Alaska all the way to the UK, corporate control of fisheries is sinking fishermen.
So it is a speaker.
Oh, that's too bad. But who even knows how old these are?
The prawn fishery is one of our most important of the year. In British Columbia, most of the fish we catch in our waters is exported overseas, but we have a strong local market for prawns. This means that we have a rare opportunity to deliver our catch straight to communities on the coast. For decades, we've used the practice of freezing prawns in tubs of seawater to keep them fresh until we reach port. But we've just gotten some bad news. Despite the ability to have prawns available for inspection in a matter of minutes, authorities claim that freezing them makes it impossible to verify that our catch adheres to size limits, so they've banned this practice. We've never had an issue with freezing our catch in tubs in the past, and banning this practice means that we lose our market.
This is not some big corporation, Madam Speaker. These are small family businesses. This decision will destroy the local market. So why is DFO making this decision? And why are they making it now?
Roadblocks aren't uncommon these days, but it's not just this fishery or this season. Changes like this, made without any proper consultation, put our livelihoods in further jeopardy. Meanwhile, our concerns about corporations hoarding the access continue to go unaddressed.
It's often said to be a fisherman, you have to be an optimist because otherwise you're just going to be too sad.
For this prawn season, all we can do for now is wait. As for the future of our coast, that's not something we can afford to watch pass us by. So, we took it to the capital. With less than 72 hours to prepare, myself and two other young fish harvesters, Cailyn and Chelsea, showed up to Canada's Parliament to make a plea for the Fisheries Act to include regulations that return access and protection back to fishermen. Madam Chair and honourable members, thank you for having me here and listening to my story.
My name is Cailyn Siider. I'm a fifth-generation commercial fisherman from Sointula, British Columbia.
My name is Chelsea Ellis, and I'm a third-generation fisherwoman from a small fishing village in Prince Edward Island.
I decided to be a fisherman like my father and his father before him. Look to the archaeological excavations on Calvert Island, and you will see my people have been fishing these waters for at least 15,000 years.
My sisters and I would take turns going out on openings. We learned work ethic, community values, independence, how to live off the ocean, camaraderie, and respect and appreciation for the coast and all the gifts it gives us.
It's hard to sit idly as we watch this access lost go to foreign and domestic investors who have no intention of going out on the seas and fishing the product themselves.
Canadian Fishing Company or a foreign investor doesn't care about the preservation of coastal communities. The investment of these companies in the sustainability of our fish and fisheries are just that, an investment. As coastal communities, we have a vested interest in the sustainability and stewardship of our fish and fisheries because it means that our children and grandchildren will be able to eat wild salmon, to see the sunrise over the open Pacific Ocean, and they will be able to live the same adventurous, fulfilling, and beautiful life we have if they so choose. Canadian Fishing Company has its bottom line to look out for. We have our families, communities, and coast to look out for.
We were the fabric of this rugged and majestic coastline, icons of British Columbia, and we were going extinct. Finally, some good news. I may have a few more gray hairs to show for it, but we got the tub prawns in the end to maintain our local market. Following an outcry from fishermen and a petition supported by our communities across the province, the authorities agreed to allow us to continue freezing our catch in tubs for local markets this season. As for future years, there is still no guarantee that this will last. But at least for this year, we get to keep chasing that joy I've always been after since I was a kid. Everyone has their own reason for why they chose this life.
More?
For some people, it's all they've known. For others, it gives them a way to support themselves while seeking a life of adventure they never could have otherwise. I think a lot of us can relate to that. We live in a world where people are so disconnected from the food that they eat and the people that are part of getting it to their plate. Get to know us, ask us about our stories. We have a lot to share. I wish I could say this was the kind of story that ends with a clear victory, and that all it took was a swipe of a pen to resolve the complex web of challenges facing our communities and coast, but it's not. Like any real story, it's not that simple. Instead, this is one that lives on through making the conscious decision to recognize the humanity in your neighbors. Our futures are shared, after all. There's a quote from a very smart and wise woman, Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, that I think puts it best. Even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and so I must return the gift.